Welcome back to Economics with Mr. Sturgeon, and today we're going to focus on Lesson 1.5, Shortages and Surpluses. So, what does that mean when we're talking about a shortage or a surplus? Well, a shortage is when you do not have enough supply to meet a consumer's demand. So think about all those stores that are sold out of something. That means they did not have enough supply or enough product for the consumers because there was too much demand. They did not meet the consumer's demand because they didn't have enough supply or product. That is a shortage. Then you will have a surplus, which is the exact opposite. So this is when you have too much or extra supply or product even after the demand is met. I like to think of fidget spinners. At one point, there was a shortage. It was very tough to get fidget spinners. Then after a while, there was way too many fidget spinners and you could get them because there was a surplus. Supply met the demand and even had extra or too much supply. That's going to be a surplus. And so why should you care? Well, if you own a business and you have a shortage, for instance, let's say those fidget spinners, when they first came out, they were very, very popular. And some businesses didn't have enough supply or they didn't have enough product to meet the demand, which meant they had a shortage. And because they didn't have enough to meet the demand, they were missing out on possible profit. Because they were sold out, they didn't have enough. And there were people still demanding it, but since they didn't have enough, they missed out on possible profit because they were short the supply. Now, a surplus could also be bad because that means you will have extra. Now, that extra could go to waste. Let's say it's, sandwiches or donuts or bagels. Anything that's perishable will go to waste, which then means you're losing profit as well. Now, sometimes with things that don't go to waste, you don't have to worry about surpluses as much. But still, having a surplus is not good sometimes because things can go to waste and you will lose profit. But again, there are certain times when having a surplus is good. Having a surplus of masks for COVID-19 or cleaning supplies, that's a good thing. They're not really perishable, so you don't really need to worry about losing out on profit. But especially, let's say you have a restaurant. If you own a restaurant, you really have to worry about surplus because you might have food that goes to waste, which then will cut in to your profit or how much money you make. And in the graphs, you will see we are going to find out today how do we calculate how much we have in surplus or how much we have in shortage. Last lesson, we even talked about companies out there that actually limit the supply, who actually actively look to have a shortage. Supreme is a great example. Supreme makes a limited amount of supply, a limited amount of product. They make sure they have a shortage. Are they missing out on profit? Absolutely. But also because they are limiting the supply of their Supreme t-shirts or their Supreme backpacks, they can increase the price as much as they want and the demand will still be there. So there are companies out there who on purpose will limit the supply or have a shortage, make something scarce or rare, because then they can increase the price and the demand will still increase. There are companies out there who will on purpose have a shortage. Even though in most cases having one is a bad idea, with things like luxury or Veblen goods, it's actually good to limit your supply because demand will still increase no matter how much you charge. So how do we figure it out? Well, when you look at a graph, you will have your supply line, which goes up to the sky, and you'll have your demand line that goes down to the dirt. So a shortage is when demand for a product exceeds the available supply produced. So it's when there is too much demand and not enough supply. Now, if there is a shortage, the price will increase because there's not enough of it. So you can start charging more. The supply obviously is decreasing because there is a shortage, there's not enough. Now usually, and I'm saying usually because this isn't always the case, but because price increases, demand will sometimes decrease because of the price increase. I think gasoline's a good example. When price increases for gasoline, so when price goes up for gasoline, less people will drive because they don't want to pay that high price. However, there are exceptions. I think masks are a perfect example. Prices for masks have increased, but the demand has increased as well. So even though there is this shortage of supply and price has increased, masks still have a very high demand. But what we want to know is how much are we short in supply? How much do we have? How much is being demanded? And how much are we short? So there's a few ways you can try to figure this out. There's complex equations where you basically count the area that makes up this triangle, but I'm going to go at the basic level of how to figure out your shortage. You're going to figure out how much your demand is at a certain price. Then you're going to figure out how much your supply is at a certain price. And that's going to give you your shortage. So let's try an example. Here is your example. What is the supply of chocolate bars at 40 cents? So we know P, price, is 40 cents. Take a minute, find the supply. And so what is the supply at 40 cents? Well, at 40 cents, we're going to go over. We're going to stop at this first line because that's our supply line. You go down. And so you know your supply is 100 bars of chocolate. We have only made 100 bars of chocolate for, let's just say, the state fair. Now, what is the quantity demanded at 40 cents? So take a moment. How much is demanded at 40 cents per bar of chocolate? Well, if you took a moment, at 40 cents, we went across. We did not stop at this first line because that's the supply line. We kept going. And at 40 cents, the demand is 500. So you have, at the state fair, 100 bars of chocolate, priced at 40 cents. That's pretty cheap for a bar of chocolate, which is why our demand is so high. Because we're only selling these for 40 cents, we have a very high demand. Remember, when price is low or when price decreases, demand will increase. So demand has been increasing as the price decreases. So how many bars of chocolate are we short? We are missing out on how many bars of chocolate. So take a moment, try to figure out how many bars of chocolate are we short. Well, you took your 100 bars of supply of product that you had. You had 500 people demand it, which means you were actually out or you were short 400 bars of chocolate. Now you could flip-flop these kind of numbers, not to get the negative 400, but if you did the equation, 100 bars of supply, sometimes I like to label this as supply, 500 bars demanded, you have a shortage of 400 bars of chocolate. You are missing out on 400 possible sales. So that is your shortage. Now let's try for surplus. Surplus, same kind of concept. This is the opposite though, where you will have extra. So you're going to have extra goods, which can go to waste. And so this is when supply is very high, but the demand for your product is very low. An example would be flooding the market with fidget spinners. Fidget spinners, when they were really popular, so many stores bought so many fidget spinners. And then they couldn't get rid of them because even though the supply was high, everybody didn't want them anymore. Demand was low. So how do we figure out our surplus? Well, just like we figured out the D shortage. You're going to find your supply, you're going to find your demand, and you're going to find out if you have a surplus or a shortage. So let's try it out. What is the supply at $2 per chocolate bar? So you've decided to increase the price of your chocolate bars. So take a minute, find $2. How much is being supplied at $2? Well, if you go across, we're not stopping at this first line because that's the demand line. We keep going. At $2, we have 500 bars of chocolate are being supplied or produced. So we take 500 bars to the state fair. Number 2, what is the quantity demanded at $2? Go to $2. Find your demand line. The demand line's right there. You go down. 100 bars are demanded because this is your demand line, demand to the dirt. So then let's put it in that equation that we thought of earlier. You have 500 bars, but only 100 people want them. So how much do you have left over? Well, put it into the equation. We have a surplus of 400 bars, which means 400 bars of chocolate went unsold at the state fair. Now that's going to go to waste, which means we're going to lose out on possible profit. So we had a surplus of 400 bars of chocolate. And so what we need to figure out next is, all right, how do we avoid a surplus or a shortage? Well, that's going to come down to something called equilibrium. And that's what we're going to cover in the next lesson. Thank you and enjoy.